there's a story that haunts me, a stark reminder of the ocean's power. It's about a young marine biology student named Anthony White, a surfer in California. He knew the risks, he researched the surf spots, but on one fateful morning, he ignored the obvious warning signs. He paddled out, seeking the perfect wave, into what was essentially a great white shark's hunting ground near a seal rookery. The summer of 2014 brought perfect weather to Surf Beach, California. Sunshine filtered through the morning mist, painting golden patterns on the glassy ocean surface. Anthony, just 22, was exactly what you'd expect from a California marine biology student with a passion for surfing. He'd been surfing for 8 years. His friends saw him as a perfect blend of fearless adventure and a deep respect for ocean life. He was known for his enthusiasm and tendency to seek out remote breaks. But he was also methodical, always researching surf spots and ocean conditions before paddling out. He'd spent weeks planning this solo dawn patrol session. This morning, adventure was meant to be the perfect combination of his two passions, surfing and marine biology. The college student arrived at Surf Beach just as the sun was rising. He spent the first hour checking conditions and waxing his board at the remote location. But Anthony was restless, telling other early morning surfers that the real waves were beyond the crowded spots, despite the area being right next to a massive seal rookery at Point Conception. That morning, Anthony set out early, carrying his 6'2" shortboard and minimal safety gear. He signed the beach access log, indicating he planned to surf the main break. But somewhere along the way, Anthony spotted what looked like perfect waves breaking further offshore. Despite the prominent warning signs about marine life in the area, Anthony paddled out about 150 yards from shore to position himself. The area was beautiful, almost too beautiful, with seals barking in the distance and crystal clear water revealing the sandy bottom below. While setting up for the perfect wave, Anthony suddenly noticed something alarming. The water was unusually quiet. There were no other surfers in sight, and the seals had stopped chattering. But he was so focused on catching the wave that he ignored these warnings. Finally, Anthony had positioned himself perfectly and was sitting on his board, legs dangling in the water. Then a terrifying silence fell over the ocean. Out of nowhere, a massive great white shark emerged from the depths, 20 feet below where Anthony was sitting. He had entered the domain of one of nature's most efficient predators. Great whites are living fossils, virtually unchanged for millions of years. Their torpedo-shaped bodies are perfectly designed for explosive attacks. These apex predators can detect blood from up to 500 yards away and sense the electrical impulses of a beating heart from several meters. When hunting, great whites approach from the depths in bursts of speed exceeding 35 miles per hour, using the element of surprise to deliver devastating attacks with bite forces reaching up to 4,000 pounds per square inch. Anthony reacted instantly, but there was nowhere to run. The massive predator struck from directly below, covering the distance in a split second. Anthony managed to see the shark's massive form just before impact. The attack came with such explosive force that both he and his surfboard were launched into the air. Anthony's screams cut through the morning silence as the shark's jaws clamped down on his torso. He fought desperately, punching at the predator's snout as it held him in its powerful grip, its head shaking violently as razor-sharp teeth sliced through flesh and bone. The great white released Anthony after several seconds, a typical behavior for these predators when encountering unfamiliar prey. But the damage was already catastrophic. Blood immediately began clouding the pristine water as Anthony, despite his severe injuries, began paddling frantically towards shore on his damaged board. The shark circled below, following the blood trail but maintaining its distance, waiting to see if this strange prey would weaken enough to approach safely. Anthony managed to cover nearly half the distance to shore, his movements becoming weaker and more erratic as blood loss and shock overwhelmed him. A jogger on the beach heard Anthony's screams and immediately called for help, but the remote location meant rescue was still minutes away. By the time lifeguards arrived, Anthony had disappeared beneath the surface, the ocean swallowing him whole. 2 hours later, Anthony's mangled surfboard washed ashore, bearing the unmistakable crescent-shaped bite marks of a great white shark. The massive gouges told the story of an encounter with one of nature's most efficient predators. Anthony's body was never recovered, despite extensive search efforts. The university established a memorial scholarship in his name, and Surf Beach was temporarily closed while marine biologists studied great white activity in the area. The attack led to enhanced warning systems and additional safety briefings for surfers. As the sun set over the California coastline, the memory of Anthony White served as a stark reminder. I've spent years studying the ocean's most adaptable killers, and one attack in particular still haunts me. It happened on the morning of September 3rd, 2015. The conditions were perfect in Galveston Bay, Texas, a brilliant blue sky over the Gulf Coast. But beneath the surface, a tragedy was about to unfold, a stark reminder of the ocean's unforgiving power. David Walter, a 26-year-old charter fishing entrepreneur, was living the American dream. He'd built his business from the ground up, and his clients loved his enthusiasm and knack for finding fish. He was methodical, safety-conscious, and driven to give his customers the perfect fishing experience. On this day, he was taking 4 tourists from Dallas out to celebrate a bachelor party, promising them action near the Galveston jetties. They'd spent the morning pulling in red snapper and speckled trout. David expertly managed the boat as the cooler filled with their catch. He navigated to his favorite spot, just a mile offshore, where the depth dropped to 25 feet, attracting bait fish and predators. The tourists were having the time of their lives, already planning another trip. But as they prepared to move, disaster struck. The boat's engine coughed, sputtered, and died, leaving them drifting in the strong Gulf current toward the shipping channel. David quickly diagnosed the problem: a clogged fuel filter. It should have been a simple fix, but the boat's anchor began dragging in the powerful current. The situation was becoming dangerous, and David knew he had to act fast. He'd heard warnings from other charter captains about unusual activity in the area. The water was murky from recent storms, making it hard to see what might be lurking below. But David had fished these waters for years without incident, and reasoned that the popular fishing spot would be safe with other boats nearby. With his clients growing nervous, David made a fateful decision. He stripped down and dove overboard to manually reset the anchor, hoping to stabilize their position while he fixed the engine. What David didn't know was that he had entered the hunting grounds of one of the Gulf's most dangerous predators, the bull shark. These sharks are incredibly adaptable, equally at home in saltwater and freshwater. They can swim far up rivers and into freshwater lakes where other sharks can't survive. This means they can appear virtually anywhere there's water, from the open ocean to golf course ponds, miles inland. Their aggressive temperament makes them responsible for more unprovoked attacks on humans than any other species, except great whites. They have a bite force of 1,350 lbs per square inch and electroreceptors that can detect electrical fields from several meters away. David worked underwater to free the stuck anchor, but the current was stronger than expected. The anchor had become wedged in debris. Unbeknownst to him, a 7-foot bull shark had been patrolling the fishing grounds for hours, drawn by the chum slick created by David's successful charter. The predator's incredibly acute sensors detected the electrical fields generated by David's rapidly beating heart and the scent of blood from hundreds of yards away. What happened next occurred with shocking speed. David never saw the shark coming through the murky water. The bull shark struck from behind, its massive jaws clamping down on his leg with crushing force, before immediately releasing and circling for another attack. The impact was so violent that David's clients heard his muffled scream through the water. David fought desperately to reach the surface, but the bull shark continued its relentless assault. True to its species' aggressive nature, the predator struck again and again, each bite tearing away more flesh. The shark's persistence was terrifying. Once committed to an attack, bull sharks rarely give up, continuing until their prey stops moving. The multiple attacks created a feeding frenzy mentality, and the murky water became a churning mass of blood and violence. David's clients watched in horror as the water around their boat turned red. They screamed for help and radioed the Coast Guard, but David had already disappeared beneath the surface, overwhelmed by the bull shark's relentless assault. The Coast Guard arrived nearly an hour later, finding only David's torn shorts floating in blood-stained water. The bull shark had vanished into the murky depths, leaving behind only traumatic memories for 4 witnesses. There's a story they tell in every boating safety course along the Texas coast. It's about a charter business that died when its owner, David, went missing. His body was never recovered. The incident led to new safety protocols, things like emergency beacons and backup communication. But thousands of miles away, in Hawaii, another predator was about to show why it earned the most terrifying nickname in the ocean. This time, the attack would happen under the cover of darkness, where even paradise becomes a hunting ground. April 22, 2016 brought perfect conditions to the remote coastline near Hena, Maui. A gentle wind rustled through the palm trees as the sun painted the sky. Christian Smith, a 24-year-old, couldn't have asked for better conditions for his solo fishing adventure at one of his secret spots along Maui's untouched coastline. He embodied the laid-back Hawaiian lifestyle that drew so many to the islands. With his easy smile and encyclopedic knowledge of hidden fishing spots, Christian had become a local favourite at the surf shop where he worked. Friends described him as fearless and independent, always venturing to remote locations that other anglers avoided, searching for that perfect fishing experience only the islands could provide. That evening, Christian loaded his truck with heavy tackle designed for the large predatory fish that hunted Hawaiian waters after dark. The location he'd chosen was breathtakingly beautiful, but completely isolated. A secluded beach accessible only by a rough dirt road winding through dense tropical vegetation. Christian arrived just as darkness was settling over the ocean. The spot was perfect. A protected cove with deep water close to shore, and a coral reef that attracted schools of bait fish during night hours. He set up his gear methodically, rigging the heavy equipment he'd need for the monsters that prowled these waters after sunset. As Christian waded into about 6 feet of crystal clear water to cast beyond the reef break, everything seemed perfect. The water was so clear he could see the white sand bottom, even in starlight. He'd already landed 2 nice fish when disaster struck. Moving through the water to reposition for a better cast, Christian's foot slipped on wet volcanic rock. He fell hard against sharp coral formations, opening a deep gash on his leg. Blood immediately began streaming into the pristine water around him. Local Hawaiian fishermen had warned about increased predator activity during night hours, but Christian had fished these waters countless times. What he didn't know was that the remote location had become a hunting ground for one of the ocean's most dangerous predators. As Christian tried to assess his injury in the dim light, he realized the cut was deeper than expected. His splashing and the metallic scent of blood created the perfect storm of stimuli that trigger a predator's hunting instincts. He had attracted the attention of Hawaii's apex predator. Tiger sharks are perfectly adapted for nighttime hunting in both shallow and deep waters, earning the nickname "wastebasket of the sea" because they'll eat virtually anything. Their stomachs have contained license plates, tires, and even other sharks. These massive sharks can grow up to 18 feet long and possess an indiscriminate appetite that makes them particularly deadly during nighttime hours when they move into shallow water to hunt. Tiger sharks can detect blood from several hundred yards away, and their lateral line system senses the slightest vibrations in the water, making escape nearly impossible once they lock onto a target. Christian began wading towards shore, but his movements became increasingly erratic as blood loss affected his coordination. The coral cut was more serious than he'd thought, and the metallic scent drifting through the water was like ringing a dinner bell for every predator in the area. A 10-foot tiger shark had been patrolling the reef edge when Christian's blood trail reached its sensitive nostrils. Unlike more cautious reef sharks, tiger sharks are known for their bold, reckless approach to anything in their territory, especially during nighttime hunting hours when they become most active. Christian never saw death coming through the dark water. The attack was sudden and devastating. The tiger shark struck from the side, its massive jaws clamping down on his injured leg with crushing force. The impact knocked Christian off his feet, sending him tumbling in the deeper water. The predator's attack was relentless and indiscriminate. Tiger sharks are known for their tenacious grip, often holding prey while using their muscular bodies to roll and tear. The shark maintained its grip while striking with its powerful tail, creating a whirlpool of violence. What makes tiger shark attacks particularly horrific is their feeding behavior. Once they taste blood, they enter a feeding frenzy, biting repeatedly until prey stops moving. Christian fought desperately, but the predator's grip was unbreakable, and each movement only intensified the attack. I've seen the ocean give, and I've seen it take away. Sometimes it takes in the most brutal ways imaginable. I remember reading about Christian out on a remote Hawaiian beach. His screams, they say, echoed across the empty coastline. But there was no one to hear them. A tiger shark, with an indiscriminate appetite, made escape impossible. They found his truck the next morning, his fishing gear still on the beach. But Christian? He'd vanished. The water, which had brought him so much joy, had claimed him. A massive search followed, helicopters and hundreds of volunteers scouring the area. 4 days later, they found his body on a beach 8 miles away. The Hawaiian community held a traditional blessing ceremony, and his surf shop colleagues created a memorial fund for ocean safety education. It's strange to think that while tiger sharks hunt under darkness in Hawaii, a similar tragedy was brewing off the rugged Northern California coast. The same species that claimed Anthony White was about to show that even seasoned professionals are never truly safe from the ocean's most intelligent predators. November 8th, 2017. A crisp autumn day in Fort Ross, Northern California. The morning fog lifted, revealing a dramatic rocky coastline where Pacific swells crashed against ancient sea stacks. Ryan Walsh, 29, couldn't have asked for better diving weather. Calm seas and good visibility promised a profitable day harvesting abalone, those prized mollusks that command premium prices. Ryan was a commercial abalone diver, a dangerous profession. His weathered hands and sun-damaged face told the story of 6 years spent in frigid Pacific waters, free diving to depths that would terrify most recreational divers. Friends described him as methodical and safety-conscious, but also driven by an obsessive pursuit of the perfect abalone beds hidden in the rocky depths. That morning, Ryan launched his small boat with his dive partner Marcus, a younger diver who looked up to Ryan as a mentor. They'd worked together for 3 seasons, developing a wordless communication that comes from shared danger in one of California's most hazardous occupations. Ryan chose a productive rocky reef in 25 feet of water. The location was challenging. Strong currents, kelp forests, and the ever-present danger of entanglement in abandoned fishing nets littering the bottom. As Ryan suited up in his thick wetsuit, he felt the familiar mixture of excitement and apprehension. The water temperature was a bone-chilling 55 degrees, but Ryan had built up a tolerance over years of expo. His dive bag contained an abalone iron, measuring gauge, and collection bag, the tools of his dangerous trade. The first few dives went perfectly. Ryan descended through the kelp canopy to the rocky bottom, where clusters of red abalone clung like living jewels. His experienced eye identified legal specimens, and his practiced hands pried them loose with surgical precision. But on his 7th dive, disaster struck. Working to free a particularly large abalone, Ryan's fin became entangled in abandoned fishing nets. The nearly invisible monofilament wrapped around his leg like a spider's web, holding him against the rocky bottom as his air supply ran dangerously low. After a desperate struggle, Ryan managed to cut through enough netting to break free. He made an emergency ascent, lungs burning as he fought through the kelp toward the sunlight. When he finally surfaced, he was exhausted, disoriented, and dangerously far from his boat. What Ryan didn't realize was that his distressed movements had attracted the attention of California's apex predator, great whites. Living fossils that have patrolled these waters for millions of years. Perfectly adapted to hunt in the kelp forests where seals and sea lions congregate, these massive sharks typically reach 12 to 16 feet and can weigh over 3,000 pounds. Their torpedo-shaped bodies are capable of explosive bursts exceeding 35 miles per hour, enough to launch them completely out of the water. Their incredible sensory system allows them to detect electrical fields from several meters away and track blood trails from a 500-yard distance. During autumn, mature great whites patrol northern California in greater numbers, following the migration patterns of their preferred prey. These sharks are incredibly intelligent, capable of learning and adapting hunting strategies, making them unpredictable and extremely dangerous to humans who venture into their territory. Marcus, watching from 300 yards away, immediately recognized that something was wrong. Ryan floated motionless at the surface, clearly in distress. Marcus started the engine and raced toward his partner, but the distance seemed impossibly far. The 13-foot great white had been patrolling the kelp beds when it detected Ryan's emergency ascent. The shark's acute senses picked up electrical impulses from his rapidly beating heart, the scent of abalone in his collection bag, and the erratic movements of a creature in distress. All triggers activating predatory instincts. Ryan never saw the attack coming. The great white struck from below with devastating force, its massive jaws clamping down on his torso with a bite force reaching 4,000 pounds per square inch, slicing through his wetsuit and into vital organs. The shark's initial bite was exploratory, typical great white behavior with unfamiliar prey. But the damage was already catastrophic. The predator released Ryan and circled back, following the blood. I still remember the shock that rippled through the abalone diving community when Ryan died. The new safety regulations, the temporary close of Fort Ross. It all felt so inadequate in the face of such a sudden loss. It was a stark reminder that even with all our knowledge and precautions, the ocean remains a wild and unpredictable place. But as Northern California's great whites patrol their kelp forests hundreds of miles south, in Florida's warmer waters, another drama was about to unfold. Another attack, this time in crystal clear water, where every horrific detail would be visible, turning a spearfishing competition into a feeding frenzy. August 14th, 2013. The morning sun sparkled on the emerald Atlantic waters off Jupiter Inlet, Florida, creating ideal visibility for the annual South Florida Spearfishing Tournament. For Alex Paul, a 33-year-old construction foreman from Miami, the conditions couldn't have been better. He was passionate about spearfishing, spending weekends free diving, honing his breath holding and perfecting his aim. He wasn't a professional, but his athleticism and experience earned him respect. That morning, Alex joined 40 other competitors. The target species were cobia, kingfish, and grouper, prized game fish with high point values. Alex had scouted the area and identified promising spots. As the competition began at sunrise, Alex and his dive buddy Carlos headed to a productive reef in 30 feet of water, where bait fish schools attracted larger predators. The water was exceptionally clear, with 80-foot visibility. For 2 hours, Alex had moderate success. But as the morning progressed, he became focused on finding a trophy fish. And then he saw it, a massive cobia cruising the reef edge, easily 50 lbs, worth maximum tournament points. Alex hyperventilated to extend his bottom time and dove to intercept the fish. His shot was perfect, striking just behind the gills, but the wounded fish immediately took off for deeper water. In his excitement, Alex became separated from Carlos and the other divers, finding himself alone in an isolated section of the reef. The wounded cobia's struggle created a significant blood trail as Alex fought to control the powerful fish. When he finally surfaced with his prize, he was bleeding from cuts caused by the sharp fins and exhausted from the underwater battle. The combination of fish blood and his own, along with the struggles of the dying cobia, created the perfect stimuli to trigger the predatory instincts of every shark in the vicinity. What Alex didn't realize was that he had attracted one of Florida's most dangerous predators, the bull shark. These powerful hunters, perfectly adapted to the state's warm coastal waters, typically reach 6 to 8 feet in length. Their specialized kidneys allow them to survive in both saltwater and freshwater, enabling them to appear anywhere from the open ocean to golf course ponds miles inland. Their incredible sensory system allows them to detect vibrations from struggling fish hundreds of yards away, and to sense electrical fields from several meters. Unlike other shark species that may be more cautious around humans, bull sharks are known for their bold, direct approach, often competing with spear fishermen for their catch. Their aggressive nature and opportunistic feeding behavior, combined with their ability to strike repeatedly, make them one of the most feared predators in American waters. This particular 7-foot bull shark had been patrolling the reef when the scent of blood reached its nostrils from hundreds of yards away. The predator's acute senses detected the electrical fields generated by both the struggling fish and Alex's rapidly beating heart. Alex saw the shark approaching. He tried releasing his catch, hoping to distract it. But bull sharks are opportunistic feeders with insatiable appetites, and multiple potential prey items only intensified their aggressive behavior. Instead of taking the offered cobia, the water turned crimson. I can only imagine the horror of that scene. Alex, a respected member of the spearfishing community, was struck by a bull shark. The attack, they said, was swift and brutal. The shark's jaws clamped down on his leg with crushing force, severing major blood vessels. Those characteristic multiple strikes caused massive tissue damage. He fought desperately, punching at the shark's snout, trying to reach his dive knife. But the bull shark continued its relentless assault, striking again and again. Other divers, alerted by the commotion and the spreading blood, raced toward Alex. They found him floating unconsciously, his spear gun and wounded cobia drifting nearby. The bull shark had vanished. Despite immediate first aid and a Coast Guard helicopter evacuation, Alex died from massive blood loss during the 40-minute flight to the trauma center. The tournament was cancelled, and the spearfishing community mourned. His death, though tragic, led to enhanced safety protocols at tournaments. New requirements mandated closer proximity to dive buddies. Organisers began providing emergency response training. The association established a memorial fund promoting safer diving practices.